Okay, and a mature rabbit can't get through this, but a immature rabbit, a young rabbit, can. See, it's a tighter mesh at the bottom. Once you get going, you can move along pretty quickly. Hopefully this works. I'll know soon enough, right? Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and it's the end of April, and I got a problem in my garden. I've got a rabbit in here somewhere, and it's taking out my raspberries. A rabbit did the same thing with my blackberries last year, so I'm going to show you the damage, show you how I know it was a rabbit that's doing it, and then I'm going to talk about what I'm going to do about it. All right, so come on, let's have a look at this thing. Let's have a look at the situation here. So last year, 2021, I had blackberries growing here. I had about maybe 3 good plants, and they were like 6 feet high and growing really good. Then I came out one day and half of them were basically cut off about 2 feet high. And the next day the other half were cut down 2 feet high. They were cut down about 2 feet high up the stalk. They were basically chewed off and cut down, almost like a beaver had gone, the way a beaver takes down a tree. And so the takeaway from that I learned was that I shouldn't grow anything close to the fence because it's going to attract, I got a wild forest growing here, and there's all kinds of wild animals in the woods, and as you can see, the brush is actually pushed down along the edge here, and that's because deer walk right by this fence, as do bears, as does everything else, okay? The takeaway was I shouldn't be growing blackberries this close to the fence because it's just too much of a temptation. So last year I got some raspberries from Vessi Seeds, a summer-bearing variety of raspberry, and I planted them here in this bed. And they grew well, and I even got a few raspberries the first year, but the second year too is supposed to be the better year, of course. And then I came out this morning and I noticed this. Right? And over here, this. Right? And this. And this. Right? So something's gone to work on these. You can see this is the other end of that piece that was cut off. Okay, and in my estimation, it's a rabbit, and I'm going to tell you why. Because in general, well, number one, you're going to say maybe it was deer, and I have deer here. There's deer around, but I've got a fence. I got barbed wire at the top of the fence. For the most part, it keeps the deer out. Number one, because I've got sand in my pathways, you can see deer tracks. They're really obvious. It's one of the great things about having sand pathways. Any reasonably large animal leaves visible tracks because the sand's soft, right? It leaves marks. So if there had been a deer in here, I'd see tracks. But more importantly, the chewing pattern, the way it's chewed off like that, cleanly, right? A nice clean chew on one end of the cut. It almost looks like, well, beaver style, like that, okay? This is not how deer chew things. When a deer cuts a branch off, it doesn't cut it that way. Okay, the rabbit cuts it off. It basically stands up on its hind legs and it chews the stalk so that this piece falls down and it can get at the buds, which is what it wants. And you can see it's been in places there, it's been feeding on the buds. It'll come back for more tonight probably. Okay, let me show you a place where deer have been working on something. Not in my garden, but in my front yard. Okay, stay with me. All right, so this is my front garden, front yard of the house. And in my neighborhood, everybody has one huge rock on their front yard somewhere. Generally speaking, it's kind of like the style of the developer. Anyway, in front of this rock, I built a little, ornamental garden on the right-hand side of the driveway. And I've got this hydrangea plant here. And this hydrangea has been, basically the buds have been nipped off by deer. You can see, they just chew it off the way you or I would, right? Ground off. Not a clean cut, just chewing and pulling. right? They're after the buds on this hydrangea. My wife always laments this because she loves a hydrangea. When we got married, the year we got married, friends of ours gave us a hydrangea. And so it's always been a sort of a significant plant for us because it's basically like something we had at the beginning of our marriage, right? This is not the plant that was given to us. It was a different house, different property, all that sort of stuff. But anyway, you can see the way they're cut off. Not neat, not tidy, just ground off sort of thing, right? And all of them look like that. There's no neat, sharp cuts the way the rabbit does, because the rabbit has rodent teeth, and rodent teeth have a way of working on stuff that looks more like pruning shears have gone at it, as opposed to someone just mashing it apart, which is what the deer do. Okay, so this is deer damage. I don't really care too much about this plant. There's plenty of other buds. I will prune this back and it'll be fine. Right, the deer got a little taste, and that's great. At some point, the deer just leave this alone. Right, whatever. So you're going to ask, how did rabbit get in through your fence? Well, the main fence I've got here is this 2-inch by 4-inch mesh. Okay, and a mature rabbit can't get through this, but a immature rabbit, a young rabbit, can. Okay, and I've had chicken wire strung 2 feet high all the way around the fence, and that keeps them out for the most part. But there's always holes, there's always places where they find their way in, and you have to, and there's, weeds and different things growing outside the fence. And I've had viewers say, oh, you should just do this and do that outside the fence. But I mean, this is a 200-foot perimeter. It's a lot of work to actually maintain a perimeter. It's better to just fortify it, right? So the chicken wire works, but as the foliage outside the fence grows, it bends and moves the stuff out of the way. And of course, the rabbits are fairly clever. The young rabbits find a way, and I've seen them. I've seen them in the garden, I've chased them, and they've run right through this fence like they're not even there. Okay? Really, I mean, I'm talking about a rabbit the size of like a large rat. Okay? Those are the ones that get into my garden and do the damage. The mature rabbits can't get in from what I've seen. They just can't get through this mesh. Okay? Now, I mean, you can come out here with a BB gun and try to find them when they're around and pick them off. You can set up live traps or different kinds of kill traps or whatever. You can do all that sort of stuff. But it's much more effective to just set up a fencing situation that just prevents them from being in here. So let me show you what I'm going to use for fencing now. I found a new product. So I was in a store that I really enjoy being in called Princess Auto. And they've got these fences here. These are literally called rabbit fences. And the way the fence works is that it has a fairly wide mesh, right, at the top. But when you get down to the bottom, it's a much tighter mesh. Okay, like a 1-inch mesh, right? No rabbit can squeeze through an inch. Okay, so it goes from 1 inch to maybe 4 inch towards the top. But the rabbits are in that bottom 2 feet, right? This thing's maybe 2.5 feet high. All right, so I'm going to put this around the fence. I just attach it to the lower part of the fence as low as I can get it. And I predict this will keep the rabbits from coming back in. Let me show you how I attach this to the fence. I thought I'd just give you a closer look at how this fencing is constructed. See, it's a tighter mesh at the bottom and then a wider mesh at the top. Okay, so where the rabbits are moving around foraging, basically rabbit height, it's fine. And it gets wider towards the top. Right, it's a great fence if the only problem you have is rabbits. If you've got deer, this is not enough because it's just not high enough. You need to go up 4 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet, depending on what kind of deer you got, right? I think the standard for deer is 8 feet high. Now, I've put barbed wire here. It seems to work, but you use whatever works for you. Now, what I got to do here is remove anything that's in the way so I can get this nice and low at rabbit height, right? So I put some, and you can see I got some fence, what'd you call that? Chicken wire down low, right? Now I'm using a pair of shears here just to remove this underbrush close to the fence so I can get that out of the way. Move this thing out of the way. I'll move this back when I'm done. All right, so I've got the fencing and I've got this wire here. You can get this anywhere, right? Probably get it at Princess Auto too, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I've got this heavy gauge wire. I'm going to use this to attach the big fence, attach the rabbit fencing to the big fence. Okay, and what I want is little pieces, you know, like that are, I don't know. Oh, I don't want to use this for cutting, that's for sure. Got a pair of wire cutters here. Oh, maybe 6-inch pieces, right? So I'm just going to cut off a handful of these. Using these like twist tags, right? To attach the rabbit fence to the main fence. All right, so I got a handful here. Oh, got some more stuff growing right here. I mean, some of the stuff you can just pull it right out, but some of it you can't. All right. Yeah. Putting the fine mesh at the bottom. All right. I'm starting on this side of the fence because this is where they tend to find their way through. All right. Now it's a bit of a pain getting this stuff set up. Right, and it's certainly useful if you've got a person helping you with this. You know, it's ideally a two-person job. Right. Once you get going, it's a bit tedious to get started, but once you get going, it's a pretty easy process. All right, so we're going to tie that on there and tie it on at the bottom. Simple ties, nothing fancy. All right, now I'll move this along for a section. This is a great time of year to do this because in a week or so we're going to be into bug season, and this sort of thing when there's bugs is a lot more challenging, let's put it that way. All right, so I'll tie it on there. With this nice stiff tying wire, it's easy to go along quickly. I want to get it in nice and close to the fence and just tie it off. Honestly, I think even these pieces are too long. I think just a simple few inches will do. All right, so I got that. That section's basically done. I'll add one more here, I think. This stuff is galvanized, it'll last. Right, now I can put this log back. All right, that's good, that's gonna hold it in. Using this here pickaxe to sort of move things out of the way as I go. Oh, yeah. Big old carpenter ants in there. Okay, I'll move this back. I put these pieces of wood here just because they were like extra dead logs kicking around to hold rabbits away from the lower part. You can see I got wood all along here to create a kind of barrier. Just using whatever I could find, right? Even old junk, basically, stuff I found in people's trash. All right, so I'm just moving all that back, pulling out any of this underbrush because the underbrush tends to move things out of the way. All right, now we can do another section. All right, you just move it along like that. It's not a quick process. It's a bit tedious when you're on your own, but it's not undoable. Okay, I got another section here. I'm going to tie this off so it stays in place for me. All right, now I can go back and work on the part I've laid out, right? So I'm constantly pushing down to keep this low so that the lower area where the rabbits get in is closed off. Sure, they can dig underneath. That's always a risk. The kind of rabbits I have here don't tend to do that, in my experience. So I'm not so worried about that. They tend to go they find a place through and they use it, right? So the main goal is to don't give them any easy way in. Now I think this roll has about 50 feet in it. All right, I've got a 200-foot perimeter around my garden. Just push this down a bit. All right, I got a 200-foot perimeter around my garden. So that's what I have to cover with this. You don't need a lot of tie-off points because this particular fencing is very stiff. Right, the more flimsy the fencing is, the more tie-off points you need, but this is pretty stiff, okay? And you don't have to use this particular wire to attach it. Just use whatever you can get, right? Use whatever you can find. This is what I got. Right now I can move these logs back. Like that. That's tight. Nothing's happening there. Once you get going, you can move along pretty quickly. You know, you get into a bit of a rhythm. I mean, this is a chore, right? And this is something I've not been looking forward to, but it's something I knew I'd have to do this year. And so I was glad to find this product at Princess Auto. Instead of using chicken wire, which does work, right? But this stuff is just so much more stiff, strong, enduring, right? The chicken wire, as underbrush gets growing outside your fence, and it will happen, right? I mean, I've had viewers say, well, you should just have wood chips all the way around your fence. Well, then I gotta maintain, you know, a ridiculous amount of perimeter, right? I got to keep a 250-yard perimeter weed-free. That's an incredible amount of work. And as good as wood chips are at preventing weeds, there are certain weeds that actually proliferate with wood chips, okay? Because they like them. Right? Things that grow underground and just pop up, right? Right? Wood chips don't deter those sorts of things, like blackberries, like any sort of brambly type thing, right? You don't need these logs at the bottom, but they certainly help hold everything in place, right? Doesn't hurt. Got some old junk kicking around, why not, right? All right, there's another section. All right, so I think you get the gist of it. I'm going to complete the remainder. I'm basically going to run this roll out and see how far it goes. This side is the side of the garden facing the forest. This is where the forest animals tend to come into the garden. Sure, they can come in from other angles, but they prefer to come in from this side and the the south side of the garden as well, because it's close to the forest cover. I got two other sides of the garden that are kind of open, and any rabbit worth its salt wouldn't have any business being out in the open like that. They tend to come in through this thick, heavy brush because they feel safer coming in here. So by giving them no way to get in, they stay out, all right? All right, so there we are. I fenced in, I think, about 100 feet of garden, 100 feet of fence. Didn't take long, took the better part of an hour, give or take. If I was a younger man, or if I had a little bit of extra hands and so on, it could have probably happened in half an hour. But I fenced it in to this point over here, right? I think there's still risk of rabbits getting on beyond this, but that's all the fencing I got. I got to buy some more. But I think that should, based on my understanding of what happens in this garden, I think the rabbits coming in that are doing a number on those raspberries are coming from the deep woods over there. Hopefully this works. I'll know soon enough, right? And there's ways I can set up a trail cam. There's things I can do to see if it's working. But of course, if I see more damage on the raspberries, I'll know it didn't work. All right, so we're done. It took a better part of an hour, I think, to do about 100 feet of fencing. It's not easy work. You got to get down on your hands and knees. You got to get in there with your hands. I got a bit of a couple injuries, that sort of thing. You can wear gloves when you do it, but you sacrifice a little manual dexterity when you use the gloves. So I just take it on the chin and get through it. Hopefully this fencing will keep the rabbits out of the garden. They can go find some food somewhere else and leave my vegetables alone. Anyway, that's how you do it, using a little bit of fencing. There's a range of different products you can use. Chicken wire is okay. I've used that in the past, but this rabbit fencing from Princess Auto, I think it's a bit more durable of a product. I think this should last at least a decade, right? And the way I've tightened it down really good should prevent the underbrush from lifting it up, pushing it away, and so on and so forth. The problem with the rabbit fencing is that it's so light that depending on how well you attach it to the main fence, the other things that grow around the outside of the garden, which, you can tell yourself whatever you want to think, you're not going to maintain the area outside your garden, in my opinion. You're just going to let it go wild because it's just too much to maintain if you have a large garden. If you got a tiny garden, of course, there's all kinds of things you can do. But if you got a big garden, the part outside your garden is wild, the part inside your garden is managed. Right? Anyway, I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.